Clean. I'm your host, and today my guest is Vaughn Steward. He is our Prepare Like a Pro senior men's strength and conditioning coach for the Caulfield Grammarians Football Club for season 2023. And I'm really looking forward to sharing his coaching journey. I was lucky enough to meet Vaughn at Victoria University as we were studying our Bachelor of Sports Science. So it's good to have reconnected with Vaughn, and really looking forward to sharing his coaching journey as well as a personal side to Vaughn's background. But before we start today's episode, for those new to the podcast, our mission at Prepare Like a Pro is to empower aspiring athletes and staff with practical knowledge from some of the industry's most inspiring individuals and to strengthen the AFL community. If you like the show, please show your support by following us on Instagram and subscribing to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Welcome, Vaughn. Thanks for jumping on, mate.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
Thanks for jumping on and looking forward to talking all things footy and strength conditioning. But for those that aren't aware of your background, mate, do you want to talk us through how you started in the industry and some of the things you've done over the last few years?
Sure thing. So for me, I guess it started back when I was in year 12. I studied PE and I did really well in that. And I was playing soccer at the time and wanting to play at a higher level. So I understood as well that it's a small percentage of people that actually make it as a professional and elite sport. So doing PE and setting myself up to do further education in sport and exercise science was, I think, my go-to, so that I could continue to work in a professional environment around sport and around exercise, even if I didn't make it as a professional athlete. As I got through my undergraduate degree and started my master's, I've moved more into coaching, working in fitness. I had an opportunity to start my own business as a personal trainer, and I've worked with not just athletes but the general population as well. So that's been really good to improve my my people skills, which I think is essential in being able to be a good coach, regardless of whether you're working with general pop or elite athletes. And now, as you mentioned, I'm currently a strength and conditioning coach for Caulfield Grammarians Football Club, and I'm really enjoying that so far. I'm looking forward to 2023 to get really into it.
Yeah, fantastic, mate. And who have been some strong influences of your coaching philosophy to date?
I will have to say my coach and mentor, Desmond Ellis, who I met in 2009. So about 13 years ago now. He was my soccer coach, and I've been with him, still in contact with him to this day. And he's really influenced my mentality, my demeanor, the way I approach sport and exercise, and the way I approach life as well. And I guess as well, my parents and my family, mum and dad, my former manager who helped me to start my own business, Fuk Nguyen, and my wife, Esselina.
Oh, very good. And manager is in like a manager. How did that sort of start? How did you?
So after just completing my bachelor, I was looking for work. I came across the opportunity of starting a business as a personal trainer with Good Life Health Clubs in Hoppers Crossing.
Yep.
And Fuk reached out to me as the fitness director there, and he really gave me the confidence and the courage to take that leap. For someone who had never done a business before, had no experience in reaching out to people that I didn't know, and trying to sort of help them, I guess. And he was instrumental in that, and was a very big pivotal moment for me, I think, in my career and my life as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned the people side and how important it is working with general pop and working on your communication skills with personal training and working general pop, but also with Desmond and how he coached. How do you find like ways to increase your knowledge in those areas? Is it asking Desmond questions when they pop up, like giving him a call, or do you catch up with him for coffee, or is it just reflecting on remembering being the athlete and being from that perspective of how Desmond had an effect on you?
Yeah, I would say it's a combination of those things. I'm very much a kinesthetic, practical sort of learner, and I like to use trial and error with myself in terms of my training and what I feel like I respond to and what doesn't work for me works for me, but also with other people too, because it's a unique approach is required for unique individuals to find the best approach for them in a particular moment of time. And then in terms of when I'm maybe a bit stuck and as to which direction I should maybe go, yeah, definitely. Speaking with Desmond gives me a starting point to sort of delve into, and yeah, I found that really, really helpful as well.
Yeah. And for those starting out, maybe they're bachelors or they're doing their certificate 3 in personal training, what are some important things that you think when you're starting out in the industry to either build a business and build your own personal training client business, or to make an impact in sport?
For me, I was very fortunate to obviously be able to do PE in high school and really get a good solid foundation of exercise and sort of sports science there. Um, and then before I actually started my undergrad, I completed a diploma of sport development as well,
Mm-hmm.
where I was able to also do an ASCA level 1 for strength and conditioning. So these sort of gave me a bit of a better base for when I got into my undergrad. And during my undergrad, I really tried to utilize a lot of the volunteer opportunities and also even got involved in some research studies at the university that were geared toward understanding about exercise and how people respond to exercise and how people get, and how you know researchers and experts in the field test these things, um, because going into an elite environment in particular, you need to sort of have a really good um, personal understanding. I think for me that's been really useful and really helpful, um, and also to build the networks and to build contacts as well, because it's a team effort. I think regardless of whether it's an individual sport or a team sport, you reach out to people because you don't have all the answers, and you do need to have those experts or specialists in other areas to feed out from as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Great advice, mate. Thank you for sharing. And when you look back over your career today, what would be some highlights that sort of spring front of mind that you're proud of?
Oh, I would say doing P in year 12 was one, because I have to admit, as a student in high school, I was pretty average when it came to being disciplined and consistent in my studies.
Mhm.
When I got to P in year 12, I guess I was really passionate about that. I had a very good teacher who was very passionate about it. And that was probably the one time I can remember in my life where I was a bookworm, I was a nerd, and I was at the front of every class, and I knew the textbook from front to back, and I was trying to use all the things that I was learning theoretically in a practical sense as well. So for me, that was a key moment and a special moment in my life.
Mhm.
Another one would be getting through my undergrad, doing the volunteer opportunities I did, and getting myself out there a bit more. I think growing up, and I've been a bit shy from new experiences or from getting out there. So it was good to be able to open myself up a little bit more and meet new people and try different things. Yeah, and then I think probably the last two things would be developing my own business, starting my own business, getting my first client walking through the door and working with them, and then being really happy with the results that they got. And the last one would be being able to travel overseas and meeting my wife.
No, very good, mate. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for giving us a good insight into some highlights that you've achieved, and yeah, it's great to for those were either starting out in the industry or currently been in it for a few years to get a sense of some of the things that you can, rewarding things you can achieve in this role, and it doesn't necessarily have to just be financial, but also the impact that you can have with on yourself in terms of personal growth, as well as those around you. For common mistakes, are there things that you've seen or witnessed in working, whether it be with athletes at soccer level, football, or with general pop, that you've seen as you've experienced over the last few years? And if so, what are they, and how can practitioners try and avoid making them?
Yeah, from my experience, I think especially maybe younger athletes, in terms of recovery, they often become enamored with all the new modalities that are around today in terms of like massage and ice baths and all these sort of gadgets that you can use. And I think oftentimes the what I like to call 3 Rs, which is rehydrate, replenish, and rest, get neglected in favor of these maybe more advertised or exciting new methods.
Mm-hmm.
So I think athletes should really try to find that strong base of eating right, making sure they stay hydrated to the optimal level, and getting enough rest as well, getting enough sleep. Not just sleep, but also giving themselves downtime and time to have a bit of space from the stimulation of the sport and the day to day as well.
Yeah.
And from a coaching perspective, also, I think it's important to walk the walk as well as talk the talk.
Yeah, 100%. Well said, mate. And have you observed either a general pop client that you're working with or an athlete that you're working with that exceeded your expectations? They really surprised you in the results they achieved? If so, how did they do it? What did they do differently? Or yeah.
Yeah, I think I've got two probably examples that come to mind. One from general pop and one from the athletic perspective. The general pop was one of my first clients. He was a truck driver, so chronic sort of like not sleeping enough or poor quality of sleep, drinking a lot of sort of energy drinks, caffeine, eating very inconsistently or overeating, not exercising much. Had a family, and he wanted to lose 10 kilos in 10 weeks. And I really sort of tried to say to him, look, you got to, it's possible, but you got to be realistic at the stage you are now. And we worked on it. We made a plan. We did things, and he ended up losing 10 kilos in 8 weeks. He was really consistent. The days that he wasn't training with me, he'd come in on his own while I was with clients, and I would see him pushing as hard, if not harder, than when he was training with me. And he changed his habits in regards to eating, sleeping. He modified those things, and yeah, the results showed, I think, in that perspective, and he really exceeded what I really thought could be done at that stage
Mm-hmm.
when we started. And in terms of the athlete, when I was working as a S&C coach in the under 15 team, one boy came into the start of the program injured, and I was maybe a bit pessimistic about whether he'd be fully fit by the time his club season started. But he kept coming to me at every training, said, what can I do to help this? What can I do to do that? He was thirsty to learn. He was thirsty to try and help himself improve, to recover. And when he got to that club pre-season, he was probably fitter than he was when he came before he got injured. So that was another point where, because he was thirsty and because he really wanted to get to that level, he was hungry for it, and he got there. So it was really inspiring to see in such a young age.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing, and it speaks volumes in how important mindset is, and knowing what your driver is in terms of what you're doing, all the work for, whether it be to improve longevity for those that are not playing sport but just want to improve their function of life and thrive, or from an athletic performance point of view. So that's great, mate, for you to be able to have that impact and help support those people in your coaching journey. So no doubt many more stories to come. What about, do you have a favorite inspirational quote or life motto that resonates with yourself?
I have a lot. I guess if it was to be one, I would say "There are no ordinary moments" by Dan Millman.
Yeah, good one. And what about favorite way to develop your knowledge? You mentioned your kinesthetic learner. So what's your favorite way for I imagine a lot of trainers and strength and conditioning coaches, kinesthetic learners as well. What's your favorite way to either learn a new topic, or develop and polish up a certain topic that you're trying to upskill yourself with?
Yeah, I think when I got into my masters after my undergrad, a year after I'd finished, and that has been super helpful. There's been a lot of practical aspects in that, and a lot of great professionals who have been involved in the masters, teaching us and guest lectures and things like that. And then being able to take the information that I've gotten from them and from the resources that I've had access to in the masters, into my practical application, that's been probably the best way for me to learn and for me to improve myself as a coach and improve my skills and what I can bring to the bear.
Yep. And for those that are currently doing their bachelor's and they're thinking about doing their masters, what are some topics or some things that you felt that really helped you from a practitioner point of view once you undertook your master's degree?
Load monitoring is definitely a massive one for me, and like in terms of being able to ensure that athletes are recovering enough, and also training enough to give them the stimulus that they need to improve. It's a very fine balance, and it's very tricky to get that balance, especially as you get towards that elite level, where turnaround times between competition can be very or relatively small. And there's a lot of research going into that space, and a lot of people are very interested in that. So definitely that was what would be the biggest one for me. And the other one would be enhancing muscular performance from that sort of more detailed point of view. Being able to know how to train muscles, how to improve that perspective, and also knowing the difference between improving that and also improving actual joint performance, joint strength, like tendons, where you want to be able to have them support each other rather than being too dominant on one.
Fantastic. And on the education side of things, any like 3 books or documentaries, or could be podcast episodes that you think it's worthwhile either athletes or coaches to read or listen?
I think my books that I would say would be 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. There's also Highly Habits for Teens, which is written by his son, which is really good, I think, for teens and youths. Another one is Bruce Lee, A Life by the author Matthew Polly, which I really found extremely inspiring and extremely useful for myself. And also the last one would be The Road Less Traveled by Scott M. Peck.
Oh, very good. Awesome. And what about pet peeves, mate? Do you have anything in your work life that fires you up? Or could be within the industry as well of strength and conditioning?
Thinking about that question, one thing comes automatically to mind, which is in the gym, in the weights room, when people put bigger plates on top of smaller weights on the rack. That's like for me, that's an execution offense. You should be executed for that. I still to this day do not understand how that happens, why people do it, but yeah.
It's a bit of carelessness going on with that, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And then if we could put a banner on a player's or every player's bedroom for the Caulfield Grammarians senior squad, what would it read?
There are no ordinary moments. Be genuinely grateful as often and as intensely as you possibly can.
Love that. Awesome, mate. And what about your favorite way to spend your day off?
To be honest, I would have to say it's whatever I feel like, I guess.
Yeah, so you take it, go with the flow, no structure, just take as the day as it comes.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yep, yep. And talk us through your experience at the Caulfield Grammarians so far. Be a couple of weeks now into pre-Christmas training block before the boys get a break over the festive season. What have you enjoyed about the role? What are some challenges that you've faced that you think would be helpful for those that haven't worked in sport in the senior program before? And yeah, how are you finding it overall?
It's been really great. I've a privilege to work with a senior coach who's been in the AFL, who's been in the top level in the country. So he has a lot of experience and a lot of ways to tone down the nerves, I guess, for myself especially. I think having him around at the start has really helped me to settle in. But also the players as well. They were very welcoming, very approachable, and they've come to me as well about things that they have concerns with or that they need help with. And I've really found that really helpful for me to get the best out of the role and to really develop myself as a practitioner and to continue to build my skills to be able to assist athletes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic, mate. Yeah, for those not aware how it works, it's sort of in the football community level. Basically, Caulfield Grammarians are in the Victorian Amateurs Football League, which is the one of the highest comps, other than for the professional comps like AFL, VFL, would be the next level down from that. So it's a really high standard of football with high standards both from a performance point of view, but also great people involved in the club. I was lucky enough to start my coaching journey at Caulfield Grammarians, and like Vaughn, yeah, thoroughly enjoyed the role, but also the people involved with the club. So it's great to have Vaughn involved in that. It's something that we've been doing for the last couple of years as well, where strength and conditioning coaches that are qualified and they want to cut their teeth in Australian rules football. This is a great avenue to do that because you get full autonomy and doing work on the field with warm-ups, conditioning prescription, but also Caulfield Grammarians have the access to the school in using the gym facility as well over pre-season. So working on your strength and power work. So it's a great role for really developing all the things you need as a strength and conditioning coach. And also managing a large group of athletes. How have you found that? How many athletes would you have at training, do you think, at one time, roughly? With
Typically, we'd see about 20 to 30 athletes.
Yeah,
It has dropped off a little bit towards the back end of the pre-Christmas break with people going away and getting some time off. But yeah, it has been interesting to work with a larger group. I have had experience working with even larger groups than that, and I guess communication is really key, being very clear. Having a whistle helps too.
absolutely.
Sort of getting attention really quickly and powerfully, and also sort of having a rough idea or a good idea of what you're gonna be doing in terms of like warm up, conditioning, and those sort of aspects of training.
Yeah, and talk us through that for someone that's not aware of what a strength and conditioning coach does. What are some of your key focuses when you're preparing for a training session?
Yeah, so I really try to get there as early as possible. Generally, I've been there before most of, if not all, the players.
Yep.
So that gives me a bit of a chance to get my bearing, see how the weather's like, see what the ground's like, and then when the athletes start rolling, and have a chat to them individually if I can about how they're feeling, how they pull up from the last training session. Do they have any concerns or issues that I could maybe help with? And then having a chat with the head coach as well about what we're going to be doing, whether we're sticking with the pre-planned session or whether we might be changing a few things depending on who's maybe pulled out last minute or who's coming in. And then, yeah, once everyone's sort of there, we get started with the warm up. So just a really general warm up. We do a bit of huddle in, huddle out, slow stuff to start with, and building up the intensity with run throughs and sort of some dynamic stretching, and then some activation work. So things like glute bridges to strengthen those and activate those hips. Some shoulder work, so get those shoulders mobile and going, firing well. And then we get into some further conditioning. We normally do 300s, which are 300 meters of running in a specified time frame, and they try and to match that time frame for 5 rounds. And then after that, we get into more sort of the football side of things, which I just sort of stay around the coaches and help to guide that and make sure that athletes are okay and that they're not pulling up overly sore, or have any niggles or pain or anything like that.
Oh, very good. Brutal. Start off with 5 300s. What sort of times are the guys trying to hit there?
So we started off at about 55 seconds. What we did was we split the groups up into sort of more fit, less fit, and then least fit. So that way that they have an easier sort of load to manage, as opposed to them trying to sort of keep up with each other and then hurting themselves or overtraining. So that's worked really well, I think, in terms of keeping them still working at a good level where they can improve, but also not overworking to the point where they're going to have injuries or be too sore for the next training session.
Yeah, very good. And do you have access to the gym? And if so, what sort of time would you have access to that, whether it be pre-Christmas or in the new year, or the players doing that behind the scenes?
So the players usually are doing the gym work on their own and their own steam, outside of our sessions. The sessions we've had have been more focused on the skills and the conditioning, the footy conditioning perspective on the oval. So I've been looking at organising a weight session after the Christmas break, and hopefully we'll be able to continue doing a few more sessions with the team, where we're all together. We can get around each other in terms of trying to improve and yeah, I think having that session in a team setting is going to be really valuable and really beneficial at building the culture, building the bonding as well, and also building a performance environment that's conducive for performance and also health too.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And with the differences between soccer and football from a strength and conditioning perspective, is that typically your role and responsibilities would look very similar when you're at a soccer club in terms of running the warm-ups, running the running conditioning, and then if you're in the gym doing the gym work, or is it different?
No, it's fairly similar. I have been fortunate enough to work as a sports science strength and conditioning assistant at a soccer club a few years ago. I would say the only probably difference would have been that I assisted with a bit more of the tracking load perspective, because we had GPS devices that we were using. So I was involved in making sure that they came back, that the players would get it, that needed to wear it before training, and then getting those devices back, loading up the data and sending it to my supervisor, who would collate it into a format that the actual football coach, the soccer coaches could understand and make decisions about certain players and the lineup for the coming game ahead. But other than that, it was very similar.
Yeah. And you mentioned warm-ups where you're building their general movements and then building in intensity. Will you work on things like agility, acceleration, and max speed? And if so, what are some of your favorite drills for maybe developing footballers that don't have access to a strength and conditioning coach at their club? What can be some things they can do to ensure that their warm-ups are not only preventing injuries and preparing them for the session, but also improving their athleticism?
Yeah, I like to use a phenomenon I came across, which is ramp. So I use that to sort of base my warm-ups upon. So ramp, it stands for raise. So raise is getting the heart rate up the body temperature, respiration, so breathing rate and intensity up as a start to get that body nice and supple, nice and warm for the session ahead. Then A is activation, so getting down to more specific joint movements to engage certain muscles. So, for example, I mentioned glute bridges before, to get those glutes firing, so the bum muscles around the hip, which obviously are really important in any movement, the biggest muscle in the body. Another one would be, so the next one would be M, which is mobility. So getting them to do some stretches that replicate joint actions and movements in the game. So things like leg swings. It's a really simple and an easy one to do. Getting them to partner up, just getting their hips and their legs moving through that range of motion, which they would be utilizing during the session in terms of kicking drills and also even just practice matches as well. And then P would be power. So just getting a final sort of muscle activation happening. And I like to use some isometric exercises for that. So things like a wall sit or a squat hold, depending on what they can sort of handle at that particular point. And then like a side plank to sort of stimulate that core a little bit more and to really get those muscles firing and engaged and ready for the session ahead.
Very good, Ram. That's a good one for people to apply. And thanks for a detailed explanation on how they apply it and some of the reasons for doing it. How long would you typically take a group through their warm-up? How much time do you have with the athletes?
Oh, it's about 10 minutes maximum. If it's a bit, like typically on days when it's really cold, or it's a bit wet, I try and spend maybe a little bit more time if I can, ramp it up a little bit, maybe increase the intensity a little bit more, just so to make sure that their body is actually warm enough and their heat's gone up, so to prevent things like strains and sprains and just making sure that they're neurally they're ready for the session ahead as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned in the new year, you'll start getting in a group strength session. What would a typical strength session look like? And what would be some of your key focuses for the group?
For me, coming into it with maybe less complete view of where each individual athlete is at in terms of their technique and their experience in the weight room. I would start off with a really simple full body workout, get the athletes to pair up with each other, preferably more experienced guys with less experienced guys, so that way they can feed off each other, they can assist each other, and I can walk around and just supervise and make sure that everyone's sort of doing what they need to do and that no one's feeling any sort of undue discomfort, and that they're getting the right muscles engaged and in the actual exercise that they're doing, and then from there building it into progressively more complex and intense sessions. I think that would be the key for me going into them.
Yeah. And you mentioned a role that you previously did at a soccer club where you were looking after the sports science, and it sounds like there was some GPS involved in that. What are some helpful things that sports science can provide or GPS tracking for football teams, do you think?
With GPS data, I think obviously getting a snapshot of what athletes are doing in terms of volume, and then obviously as well in terms of intensity, and being able to monitor whether athletes might need a little bit more load or whether they might need a little less. And I think it's really crucial to use GPS in context alongside with things like a wellness questionnaire, where we're getting a bit more subjective view of how the athlete is feeling day to day in terms of in session to session. So that way we can say, okay, objectively they're working really intensely, and subjectively they're maybe not feeling crash hot, and that's a consistent basis where they're working really hard and they're consistently not feeling the greatest. So it may mean that we need to sort of change how much they're doing or how hard they're working per session. And for me, that's been the key, just being able to bring things into context and bringing it back to what our aims are as well, because I think it's often easy to fall into the trap of just having data for the sake of having data without really knowing how to use it, or knowing how to trace it back to what our goal is or what our aim is.
Absolutely. Well said, mate. Yeah, thank you for that insight into sports science and how it can influence your decisions. We'll start to wrap up the podcast, mate. Thank you so much for coming on and, more importantly, looking after the men's program with Caulfield Grammarians. What's on the horizon for the festive season of 22, as we're now in middle of December, but also what are you excited about for 2023?
Yeah, it's going to be good to have a little bit of downtime in the festive period. Spend some time with family. Will be really good. Have a little bit of time to refresh and relax, and at the back end of that, start to flesh out how I'm going to be getting the best out of myself in my role as a strength and conditioning coach, and also in my role as a as a person, and as a colleague and a friend and family as well. And then 2023, looking really forward to get into full swing with my role as a S&C at Caulfield, and to be able to improve myself personally, professionally, and with my relationships as well.
Very good. And you mentioned your master's degree. Where are you at with that? And yeah, what's 23 got involved? Will you be doing it part-time, full-time? Will you be finishing it? Yeah, give us a bit of an update on the course.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to potentially finishing the masters next year in 2023.
Yep.
Hopefully by the end of mid to end of next year, I'll be all wrapped up, and I'll have a new degree to put on my resume.
Yeah, very good. Awesome, mate. That's exciting times, and yeah, plenty to look forward to for 2023. And like you said, it's a great time to reset and reflect for the rest of the festive season. So it's good to have some time off. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. For anyone that's got any follow-up questions with yourself, mate, where's the best place to get in contact? Is it socials, email?
Yeah, social, email are the one. Social is Vaughn Tristan. That's my Facebook. And my email is vaughn.steward13@gmail.com.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll add those links in the show notes for anyone that's driving, listening to the podcast, so you can hit up Vaughn with any questions. And thank you for anyone that's tuned in live. If you tuned in halfway through, make sure to watch the very start. This will live on our YouTube channel until we publish it on our podcast. And our next live chat, and it's actually going to be our last live interview before I head over to America. So last one for this year is with Max Gaughan, the captain of the Melbourne Football Club. That will be 4 p.m. on 19th of December. So that's next Monday. So make sure to tune in for that one. Thank you for tuning into our chat. And thanks again, Vaughn, for your time and sharing with us your coaching journey.
Thanks, Jack, for having me. It was a great experience to be on here.